Mm-hmm. Hmm. Okay, so I wanted to make a video of a sort of introduction or reintroduction, as the case may be, of myself, Jungle Jargon. Um, and the title of this video, or this video, maybe the series of videos, is going to be Consider the Following. Consider the following of some things that a almost 67-year-old person has learned through all his studies and interests and hobbies. I do have some hobbies. One of them here, I got a little thing here. See if you can see it. See those LED lights? They're running off of water. Running off of salt water. Whoops, I just disconnected it. See if I can put it back somehow. There we go. All right. Yeah, running off of salt water. And it's pretty interesting. I might do another channel, showing how I do it and everything. But anyways, yeah, consider the following. There's a lot of things that I've run into. And for those people that do know me, that I kind of harp on some different things because there are things that people really haven't looked into very well, or for one reason or another, and they just don't know a whole lot about the subject. One of them is general relativity. I've done the thought experiments, the that Einstein talked about, the Gedanken experience, thought experiment. And and it takes a while for it all to sink in to understand exactly what is general relativity, because if you think about it like day and night for over a course of how many years, then you begin to understand it. And not that it's that hard to understand, but if you're you know approaching it without any previous information or previous understanding or teaching or whatever, it takes a while to understand it. So a lot of what general relativity is just understanding what it does, what gravity does. So that's one thing, and it has a lot of ramifications for the young Earth as well, because 14 billion years in outer space passes by much faster than where we are, because the rate of causation outside of galaxies, in between galaxies, which is most of space, at least as we perceive it, most of that distance is without gravity or very little gravity, which speeds up the rate of causation. It means things go faster. You talk about illusions of faster than the speed of light motion and faster than expected motion of the galaxies and stuff. Well, it's because the rate of causation changes, and I can go into that and explain that in more detail. I already have, but sometime I might go into it. But there's a whole range of things. The breakup of the continents in the days of Peleg. The continents were divided, or the earth was divided, is what literally the Bible actually says. So in order to get away from that, from what the Bible actually says. You have to do a lot of gymnastic somersaulting to get around the fact that the Bible actually says that the earth was divided. Okay. And besides that, there's a lot of geological evidence and circumstantial evidence, and that is exactly what happened. In the days of Peleg, which is about 100 or 200, depending on how you count it, years after the flood, that the earth broke apart. And there was a very catastrophic event similar to the global flood. So much so that the lifespan of people was cut in half a second time. So in the global flood, the lifespan of people born after the flood dropped to less than 500 years. And the life expectancy after the breakup of the continents dropped a second time to less than 250 years. So it was cut in half. The lifespan was cut in half twice, if you look at the genealogy of how long people were living. So that, that's a circumstantial evidence, but there's a whole lot more geological evidence. There's the glacier markings, which are on all the continents in the southern hemisphere, including South America, Africa, even India. India was connected to Antarctica, and Australia. So India is key because India was not pushing up the Himalayan mountains, the mountain range, or until after the breakup, which is key because there's no way that water could be as high as the Himalayan mountains. It's just way, way, way too high. So those mountains were pushed up after the global flood. That's after the breakup of the continents, when India was shoved up into Asia, or pushed Asia, because I think it actually pushed Asia north as well, or the process did, where the plate subduction and everything pushed India into Asia, and pushed Asia even farther north, so that even Siberia and North America, were shoved up into the Arctic. Well, from the centrifugal force, once they broke apart, they just, in order to reach a place of equilibrium, the northern parts of North America and Siberia were shoved up in the Arctic. Of course, they didn't go all the way, but they went far enough so that the sea level rose, and there was instant climate change, which froze all the animals, the bison, the bears, the wolves, the lions, the mammoths, and mastodons. They all got frozen instantly, or either buried by tsunamis or frozen instantly. And the question in my mind, I don't know about a lot of other people, is like, how did this happen? This was clearly after the global flood. And so the only possible explanation is the breakup of the continents that would have done that. And there's more evidence, which I can go into later, but just so that you don't think this is such an off the wall idea, this has always been on a back burner of the young earth creationist menu of what possibilities could have happened. But you have to lay down the sediment layers first before you can break them apart. So it's just kind of obvious, but still people get, they get their ideas and stuff like that. And, but you have to follow the evidence. You have to go by where the evidence is. And, I've been considering the evidence for, say, over 50 years now. because I came back to America 50 years ago, and I was even considering these things before that time. More like 55 years ago, I've been considering all these things. So it's not like I haven't talked about them, or not like there's no evidence about it. But anyways, that is one of the things. Another thing is the Table of Nations, which I want to get into a little bit as by way of review. The Table of Nations, and let's see. I guess we can go ahead and do the share screen thing here. So consider the following. Let's consider the following. What do we got here? We got, hold on a second. We got pictures. Yeah, we got pictures. All right. Well, by way of explanation, some time ago, maybe, I don't know, what was it, 10 years ago, something, went down. Oops, what did I do? Oh. I went down and visited Eric Hovind, and we had a Proof of God conference, whatever that was. It was a while back. So I was there at the Proof of God conference, and I had my own little demonstration, my video of Proof of God in 5 seconds. And so that's one. So I met with Kent Hovind and then Ken Ham as well. So this is taking longer than what I wanted it to. So I was there with Ken Ham as well. Had breakfast with him. Asked him, why in the world can't evolutionists see the fact of the flood? Why is it that it's so hard for them to see? And he quoted the scriptures. I forget which one it was, but it was pretty good. But anyway, so we have the Table of Nations spreading out. Let's go with this map first. Over here. So I should have made a folder with these pictures by themselves, but anyway, this is a pretty good picture here because it shows the 3 main groups of people would be Japheth, Shem, and Ham. And according to everything we can tell, Japheth was the oldest, Shem was the second son, and Ham was the youngest, because the Bible actually says that Ham was the younger, or, as far as we can tell, the youngest. And it follows when you look at the DNA evidence as well. So, well, this Lud here is not right. Descendants of Japheth Lud. Unless they're talking about another Lud. Here, see here, this Lud. That's Semitic. See, the orange color is Semitic, but somehow they have Lud as Japheth. It must be an error. And then they got Uzo. Okay, but this Lud is Lydia. That would be the king of Lydia. Remember, the Medes came up against the king of Lydia, and they weren't able to defeat the king of Lydia, so they made peace with him. And then it was at that time, or thereafter, shortly thereafter, is that the Medes continued on through the Mediterranean, off the coast of Africa, and traveled all the way to Central America, according to the migrations, which I've shown before, of the Q haplogroup. which is the descendants of the Medes. They came all the way over here. So they came from the east. They're Easterners. They're Eastern people. And they came, and of course, they went west too. I mean, the same lineage, a different branch of the lineage went west. This particular one went east after confronting the king of Lydia. And the haplogroup migration shows it going from here to Central America. Not only is the Q haplogroup migration going from here to Central America, the A maternal haplogroup lineage goes from here to Central America, and the C maternal haplogroup goes from here, which is Asian as well, goes from here to America, Central America, and the D maternal haplogroup comes from Asia, goes from here to Central America. So there's literally four haplogroups, lineages, and migrations that happened, that went to Central America. And then from Central America, they all spread north and south, which is totally contrary to what they've been trying to say. They've been trying to say that the Native Americans crossed through Beringia, the Bering Strait, down through Alaska, which it would be a very, very hard journey. But they said that the Ice Age opened up. The Ice Age opened up for a time, and they walked through and went to Central America. But the problem is, and they have tied the Q haplogroup to the Inuits. But the Inuit is another Q haplogroup, not the same Q haplogroup. It's not the haplogroup that crossed through the Mediterranean off the coast of Africa and went to Central America. The Inuit haplogroup are the Medes that went west all the way through the Bering Strait. They actually followed the the fishing of seals and whales, and they crossed over the Bering Strait into North America. Those are the Inuits. They belong to the Q haplogroup with the A maternal haplogroup as well, because there's a story that says that Madai, who is the ancestor of the Medes, he asked Shem, right here, this Shem, to marry one of his daughters. So we would expect that everywhere Madai went, that a Semitic lineage, would follow the descendants of Madai. So it just so happens that the A maternal lineage is a Semitic lineage that follows the Medes wherever they went. They followed the Medes through the Mediterranean to Central America, and it followed the Medes across the Bering Strait with the Inuit to America as well as the C and the D, if I'm not mistaken. But the C and the D are Eurasian mitochondrial lineages, or in other words, the descendants or the daughters of Japheth. So wherever the Medes go, you'll find a lineage that accompanies the Medes, that follows the Medes wherever they go. Even when they went up into Europe, there's the lineage of the X and the W, which is not the same letter designation as A, but they happen to be connected to A, and they split off from A. And so the X and the W in Europe, where the Medes went, is also present there with them. So that would be another expectation of the designation of the Medes being the Q haplogroup, so that everywhere they went, the Semitic maternal lineage follows, which is A, X, and W. So that that fits perfectly, and so many other things fit perfectly. This Tiraz over here is the ancestor of the Thracians. Thracians is one of the original ancient civilizations. Javan is one of the is the ancestor of the Mediterranean Sea people, which is the T designation. So the Thracians are L. The descendants of Javan are T, which are Elisha, Dodanim, Kittim, and Tarshish. So there's a T represented in Tarshish or in Spain and Iberia. There's a T haplogroup that's very prevalent among just one Judaic lineage or Jewish people, group of Jewish people. So we have Elisha, Dodanim, and Kittim. They were like in Crete. This says Rodanim. Maybe that's Dodanim, but anyways. And this Captorim, these are actually Egyptians, or a branch of probably Mitzrayim that ended up in Canaan as the Philistines, And of course they were mixing. The population of all the people became mixed wherever they went, according to where they went. Ashkenaz here went up all the way up over in here into Europe. Ripfath here went into southern Europe. Togarma went west to India, towards India. So here's Madai here. And today the Q haplogroup is in this area of the Caspian Sea right here as well. So that'd be the descendants of Madai. And not to be confused with the Elamites, which were over in this area. Here's Elam. So they would be the Elamites. And represented by the H haplogroup, which is the Semitic haplogroup. So how did all this stuff, did I figure this stuff out? Is the first thing that I figured. Notice this Shinar is in green, which is the descendants of Ham. So this Shinar here is in green because of Nimrod. And notice, a lot of people like to separate ancient history from Bible history. Okay, they like to label Bible history as mythological, but there's this king of Shinar, or he was actually the king of the world at the time. He built the city of none other than Akkad. So you've heard of Akkadians, right? Akkadians are the descendants of Nimrod of the land of Shinar. And they say he went up and built Nineveh and Kala too, up there. And in the Bible, which is real history, believe it or not, the Assyrians, which are descendants of Asher, they're Semitic, are linked in history to Nimrod, because Nimrod, the descendants of Nimrod, never went to Africa. They went into Europe. They went into Asia. They went to South Asia. They went into the Pacific. They went all the way to Australia. And they went all the way to America. Probably at the same time the Medes went, or before, even before the Medes went to Central America. Because the Olmecs have an appearance of being Polynesian looking, because of course they have the same ancestor, Nimrod. But in Polynesia it's C2, in America it's C3. So it's a different lineage with the same appearance, Polynesian-like appearance. And the anthropologists and people have been scratching their heads for years trying to figure it out. All they had to do would be to go back to the Bible and get the information from the Bible and find out why the Olmecs look Polynesian. And the answer is right there in the descendants of Nimrod, because it's in the land of where the descendants of Nimrod went, which is Central America. So, but this was the first thing. This was the first clue I had as to who is who, because in Asia you have all these. You have the Semitic populations, and you have the Eurasian populations from Japheth. And of course, Japheth is north, Semitics are south, and the Hamitic population, which includes the Canaanites, which includes the Hittites, the Hamathites, Heth, and the Hittites, just not in here, but it also includes the Sinites. So in the Bible, you might have read the Bible and heard of the land of sin, which is kind of curious or interesting. Why would it be sin? It's sin because of the Sinites in Sinai. Sinai is named Sinai because it's a land of sin, where the Sinite tribe migrated to from Canaan. So they actually migrated out of Canaan into Sinai, and they continued migrating all the way around with their D haplogroup, the D haplogroup, which is separate from the C haplogroup. It's a different lineage from Canaan instead of Cush, because Nimrod is descended from Cush. The tribe of Sin, or the Sinites, are descended from Canaan. They're Canaanites. So they travel around, all the way around through over to the Andaman Islands, all the way to China, where you have the namesake of Sino-Chinese, or Sinites, because it's the same reason why Sinai is named Sinai, is that the Sino-Chinese are named Sino because of the Sinite tribe with a D haplogroup. Went to China, they went to Japan, and they went to Tibet, and they went up into the area of the Denisovan Cave, which is the reason for the Denisovan. If it wasn't the Canaanite Sino tribe, then it was the descendants of Nimrod, or C, who are also in the area of the Denisovan Cave. So both the Cushites and the Sinites, or Cushites by way of Nimrod, and the Sinites were in the area of the Denisovan Cave, where they found the Denisovan finger, which We can look at the maps of Denisovans and the Neanderthals as well, because Neanderthals are Eurasians, and Denisovans are a mix of Eurasian and Hamitic descendants. So let's see where we go from here. I'm trying to stick to the narrative here, or the timeline, whatever, of how I figured it out. And this is one of the things that struck me struck my funny bone, that I couldn't really understand, because when you start studying DNA haplogroups, these are the DNA haplogroups now, and you have, oh, that's the Caspian Sea, and you have F over here. Now, what's F? Actually, this is closer to the original place anyways. So, wow, that's India. So anyways, that's basically where it is. But it seemed in the other maps, which I think they put F farther east, like in the area of India. This is correct as well. This is more correct. But what happened was, which I didn't understand before, because they had the F over here more in India. It's like, how did the F get over there? And it wasn't until a long time later I found out that the Arameans, which have the F haplogroup, are designated F by myself, yours truly. They migrated. They controlled the trade routes to India. So the F lineage that's over in India is that of the Arameans, who control the trade route. Now there's a totally separate F. So when it's kind of deceptive, because you have the F, and supposedly this is the first dispersion out of Africa. So somehow it went out of Africa over in here somewhere, or actually it says here, so we'll stay with it. This is actually Mesopotamia anyway. And so the dispersion of the F was from Mesopotamia. But there's not just one F lineage, there's two F lineages. So let's just go ahead and look at the F lineages here. Now, which is which? I guess, yeah, it'd be this one over here. Oops. Be this one way over here. We'll go with this one here. Just so that you know that I'm not making things up, you have two F lineages that are totally separate from each other. This F here is totally separate from this F here. So you have, they're both labeled F. Let me make this bigger so maybe somebody can see it. They're both labeled F, but they're not even the same lineage, because this one comes from over here. This one comes from over here. These are all Semitic, by the way, including the I and the J. So the way they have in the out of Africa scenario, you have the F produces the G, which produces the H, which produces the I and J, which produces the K. This K here. That's the way they have it in an out of Africa scenario, which is wrong for another number of reasons. And you can see the genetic distance between the A, B, C, D, and E and the F, G, H, I, and J. There's considerable genetic distance between the two. So they're separate lineages. And we know for a fact that J is Abrahamic because of the Cohen modal haplotype, which identifies the J lineage as coming from Abraham, who in turn came from Arpachshad, or Arphaxad, as some people pronounce it. I think it's more like Arpachshad or something like that. But I don't think people should wrangle too much about the pronunciation. Get it as correct as you think is correct, and then don't worry about how other people pronounce it. And don't make a big deal out of it either. But anyways, these are all the descendants of Shem. This IJ lineage, because I and J are connected. This IJ lineage are descended from Arpachshad. The F lineage is two lineages, so it's Aram of the Arameans, and F2 over here is Lud of the Lydians. G is the Assyrians, which are Semitic, from Asher. Asher is one of the sons of Shem. These are all sons of Shem. And then there's H of the Elamites. And the reason why I know H is from the Elamites because the only Semitic Y haplogroup in the Dravidians, or the Elamo-Dravidians, is H. So the Elamo-Dravidians, their Semitic lineage is H. So that's how I know H is the Elamites. And G is of the Assyrians because it's in the area of the Assyrians, or originated in the area of the Assyrians, and they're still in the area to this day, up in the mountains, more or less. So, and of course elsewhere. But these are the five sons of Shem then. Be Arpachshad, Elam, Asher, Lud, and Aram. So that's five sons of Arpachshad. I mean, five sons of Shem, including Arpachshad. So then that was what got me started. I mean, that's what gave me the explanation, because it's hard to understand the F. There's three lineages too that are not only single lineages. Well, there's actually two lineages. F is two lineages plus it's the whole group. When you refer to F in genetics, you're referring to these two lineages, but you're also referring to the whole group sometimes. And they would even include F as F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T, all the way to T, because in their mind, the F is a lineage that produced all these other lineages. And we know that's not true because they existed simultaneously. Because we know descendants of Arpachshad existed at the same time as the descendants of Javan and Tiraz of the Thracians. And the same thing with the K lineage. The K lineage is a single lineage, but it's also includes this entire lineage because they're trying to say that all these other lineages came from K, just like all these other lineages came from F, including K, but they have it exactly backwards. That Ham over here is the youngest one, and Japheth is the oldest one. And so we can know that it's working the opposite way of the out of Africa. Not that the IJ descended from K, but that the IJ has a common ancestor with K. And so K, the entire group of K would be Japheth, and there's a SNP marker, which is an IJK marker. So in other words, it's all the people, all the lineages with the I, J, and K, which is all of these, they share the IJK marker. This is possible, having a common ancestor, so that Arpachshad can share an SNP marker with his uncle Japheth, because Shem, the father of Arpachshad, is the brother of Japheth, so they can share a marker, which is the IJK SNP marker. So since it's totally backwards from the out of Africa lineage, the IJK marker is not gained going from left to right, or in this graph counterclockwise. It's losing markers starting with K, going right to left, or clockwise in this diagram. So that this IJK marker that all these lineages share was lost. It was lost when Shem, the brother of Japheth, gave birth to, let's say, Asher or somebody. Or no, it was Elam. But Elam has an SNP marker. It's an HIJK marker. So this HIJK marker is exclusive to the descendants of Elam, Arpachshad, and the Eurasians. But then that marker was lost to the descendants of Asher when Asher was born. So he doesn't share the HIJK marker, but he has his own GHIJK marker, which is lost to the F1 or the F and the F2. So the F and the F2 don't have the GHIJK marker, but the F and the F2, they have a FGHIJK SNP marker. So that's the way it has to be, because J is absolutely the descendants of Arpachshad. The H is of the Elamo-Dravidians. The G is of the Assyrians, and the F is of the Arameans that went all the way to India, and the F2 is Lud. And of course, R1A is Ashkenaz. You have 3 sons of Gomer. So there would have to be 3 lineages of Gomer, right? In Europe, because Gomer is known to have gone into Europe. So you have the R1A is Ashkenaz, R1B is Riphath, R2 is Togarmah. These are the 3 sons of Gomer. And they're designated as such as being R. The Q is a separate group, which is the Medes, which we've already covered. But because they were, of course, brothers, Madai is the brother of Gomer. There's not that much difference in the lineage, but it does, of course, split from Gomer. So the descendants of Madai split off from Gomer. And it's starting to fit together very well. Now there's another thing here. C is the descendants of Nimrod, as discovered earlier, because C is the only possible descendants of the house of Nimrod. Because when you talk about, in ancient writings, when you talk about the house of David or the house of Nimrod, which is a thing, the house of Nimrod is spoken of in ancient writings, you're talking about basically an entire civilization unto itself. So, for example, people don't really understand the significance of having a house of Nimrod or a house of David, which would be J2, but we haven't gotten there yet. But because of the fact that Nimrod was a king, remember the Israelites said, we want a king like the nations. Well, a king like the nations has many wives. So Nimrod was the first king of the world, and of course he had many wives, and in so doing, he reinforced his genes. So the genes of Nimrod were spread out basically all over the world. In fact, his descendants went to Europe as C1. His descendants went to America, the Pacific as C2. They went to America as C3. They went to Australia as C4. And they went into Southern Asia as C5, or China support. So the descendants of Nimrod went everywhere except for Africa. Today there might be, there's probably some C in Africa, but it's not because of the descendants of Nimrod going and fighting Africa, is that they ended up later. But they did go into Europe, they went into Egypt, they went into the Pacific, South Asia, Australia, and America. And if you look at the Olmec statues look very Polynesian to me. Because in America it's C3, in the Pacific it's C2. So they have the same common ancestor because of the significance of the house of Nimrod, or the genes, as it were, spread out all over the world from Nimrod. That's how significant the house of Nimrod is. So this could not possibly be any other person in all of history. Because for one, it's a descendant of Cush. It's a Hamitic descendant in Asia, the only Hamitic descendant in Asia that there is. That also never even went to Africa. So to me, this is what got me started. This is what got me started thinking, well, hey, I can identify each and every one of the 16 grandsons of Noah by way of their haplogroup designations, even though Nimrod is a great-grandson. The grandson would be Cush. But since Nimrod is the son of Cush, and then in some other lineages Nimrod's not even named because all the rest of the descendants went to Africa and Canaan in Africa, as we saw by the map. So there we have C is a descendant of Cush. It goes all the way, follow the C all the way down, and it connects to the A and the B. So the A and the B are descendants of Cush, plus C is a descendant of Cush as well. D is more compatible with E. And as a matter of fact, remember, like we were going backwards from K, we're going backwards and losing S&P markers. And the same is true for the C, because there's a CT marker that the descendants of Nimrod have that they share with the entire rest of the world. And it's called a CF marker or a CT marker, which includes everyone and Nimrod. But then it's got a caveat that says XDE. So it's a CF marker or a CT marker, XDE. In other words, D and E do not share the marker, the CF marker that Nimrod, the descendants of Nimrod, has. And of course, CF also means CT. So when you say CF, that includes everything if it was on a graph going to the right. But since everything's backwards, we're losing markers, we're not gaining them. So starting from K, we're losing the S&P marker of IJK. We lost the H IJK, and we lost the GHIJK, and we lost the FGHIJK marker to the descendants of Nimrod because he's the younger. But he does share the CF marker with the rest of the world that the D and the E do not have. Not only the D and the E do not have, the A and the B don't have it either. So Nimrod was in all likely cases the first son or one of the first sons of Cush. So he can share a marker with the rest of the world, while the rest of the Cushites and even the Hamites don't share it. The other Hamites, Cushites, Canaanites, the Phoenician descendants of Put and Mitzrayim don't have. So the E2 I have designated as Canaan. E1 I have designated as Put because of their migrations. I haven't shown the migration, but because of the migration, E1 is Put. E3, which is all these probably, or something, or it's one of these. E3, which is a very, very large population, because Mitzrayim had lots and lots of sons, and they spread out all over Africa, the Mediterranean, Europe, even up into Europe. And they are exclusive to Mitzrayim, or they're E3. So the E2 is Canaan, E1 is the Phoenicians, which went over into West Africa more, because they're distinct groups, they're distinct separate groups, and D happens to be compatible with E2. In other words, it has the same S&P markers. So that D, which is in China, Japan, Tibet, and the Andaman Islands, is compatible with being the descendants of Canaan. So that's how that works, which is very, very interesting. And of course, if one of these things was out of place, it would be a problem. but they just all fit so well. It's really amazing. So anyway, let's see where we go from here. Oh, let's talk about the Denisovans. Yeah. So we have this is the Denisovan allele frequency, and what was this one? This is the Neanderthal. Okay. Okay. So let's start with the Neanderthal. Might as well start with the Neanderthal. As you can see, the Neanderthal, what happened? Oh, now it's getting messed up. Oh, here it is. So my computer's lagging a little bit. Well, wake up. Okay. So yeah, this is the Neanderthal DNA. And it's going from hot to cold. So we can see here who has Neanderthal DNA and who doesn't. So all of Europe and Asia, they have Neanderthal DNA, which was the big discovery, which is a contradiction to the out of Africa claim as well. Because if Neanderthals were the first people out of Africa, they should have more in common with Africans than anybody else. So that's another problem. But the point to note here is that in these areas of Asia, there's a strong Neanderthal component. Of course, in Papua New Guinea, there is the derivatives of the K haplogroup, which I didn't get into, but be the M and the S, which are derivatives of K, which is Eurasian, right? And see, these areas have strong genetic influence of Neanderthals because of the fact that they are Eurasian, or basically Asian, because the Eurasians, I mean, in Asia, they also have the mitochondrial DNA from the maternal line of the daughters of Japheth, while the ones in Europe do not have the maternal lineage of the daughters of Japheth. 95% of Europe has the lineage, a Semitic lineage of one or another. The Semitic lineage, which doesn't have to necessarily be of Israel to be Semitic. It could be Assyrian, it could be Lydian, it could be Elamite, whichever, because Japheth had a lot of sons and probably not so many daughters. Shem only had 5 sons, but the possibility is that he had more daughters. So that's why Madai of the Medes asked to marry one of the daughters of Shem, a Semitic lineage. That's why the Medes have a Semitic lineage wherever they go. But the point being is that this is more Neanderthal because it's more Eurasian than over here. Over here, it's mixed with Semitic population. And even this K down here in Papua New Guinea, which is derivatives of K, which is M and S, are also Eurasian. So that's the reason for that. This here is I have to double check on that, but it might have to do with the Sinite tribe. Of course, the Denisova cave is way up here. Anyways, but let's go ahead and look at the Denisovan chart, because this is Neanderthal going from hot to cold. And of course, Africans have the least amount of Neanderthal DNA, which would be a contradiction, which they should have more than anybody, it seems, or as much or more than anybody. Anyways, they got their reasons for saying otherwise. But let's look at the Denisovan DNA chart. Heat map. This would be a heat map. If my computer will cooperate, that would be good. So there it is. Denisovan allele frequencies. As that one is loading, this is just to get an idea of the heat map, how much of which of Neanderthal that people have, and how much Denisovan allele frequency that people have. So now this is Denisovan. So Denisova would be, and there's the Denisova cave up there. So it might seem like a contradiction, but keep in mind that in this area of Asia, there and Tibet and China, there is the Hamitic D and the Hamitic C in this area. In fact, C goes all the way through here. D goes all the way through here to the Japan too as well. In fact, they go out this way and they come through here. According to the migrations, the D haplogroup went to China first, then to Japan, then to Tibet. And they're not only in Tibet, but they're up here in this area as well, which we could show on the other map. But the thing to notice here is who doesn't have Denisova DNA. And that would be, so the cold spot is this area, which is highly Semitic. And this area up here, which is highly Semitic. Up in the Scandinavia and such, Denmark, that's highly Semitic as well. That has less Denisova DNA because of the fact that Denisovans, and they're not even showing a lot of information. They're just taking samples and showing a heat map according to the samples that they took. But the thing to know here is that it's the Semitic population that doesn't have Denisova DNA as much. As opposed to the Neanderthals, it was the African population that didn't have African or didn't have Neanderthal DNA. So this one here is showing that the ones who do have Denisova DNA would be Eurasians, or which is mostly in Asia, and which it doesn't show it here because Africa is not even, they don't even have samples from Africa, but so if it's not Semitic, it would have to be, so the Denisovans are a mix of Eurasian and African. Turns out that like I was saying before, the C and the D is in the area. That's why the denisovant finger bone can be denisovant. Okay, they've found more recently that in the Philippines there's a large signature of denisovant DNA, but the only ones in this area here is the C of Australia, C4, and the K derivatives of M and S, which is Eurasian. So the only ones in this area are Eurasian and Hamitic. That would be here as well included. The D haplogroup and the C haplogroup are both Hamitic, and the M and the S is Eurasian. So it's a mixture, shows clearly a mixture of Eurasian and Hamitic mixture minus the Semitic population. And another interesting thing is over here, not only the Semitic influence in America, but the Hamitic influence in South America. Because in South America and Central America, for that matter, where the Olmecs were, and even up into America, if they did sampling up here, there'd be C up here as well from the descendants of Nimrod. So descendants of Nimrod, when they reached Central America, they went north into North America, and they went south as well. And they're still there in the wild tribes, where they used to be wild tribes of the Quechua, the Waorani, Quechua, and the Wayus. These three tribes in South America have the C haplogroup, which would be C3 of the descendants of Nimrod. So that's the reason for this heat from here. And besides the fact that Q is already Eurasian as well, but not necessarily a mix of African and Eurasian. It's mostly just Eurasian. The Q is Eurasian, but then the C through here is Hamitic. So it's Hamitic and Eurasian as well in South America, because the Q is Eurasian, the C and the D mitochondrial DNA lineages are Eurasian. So there you have it. Denisovans are a mix of Eurasian and African, not Semitic. And Neanderthals are just strictly Eurasian. We know that because 95% of Europe is Semitic, and all this area here is Semitic mitochondrial DNA, which is the reason it's less than the Asian. That's the reason why the Asians have more Neanderthal DNA, is because of the Europeans have 95% of European, Western Europe, and probably here too, is Semitic mitochondrial DNA. So that explains a lot for sure. Now I got one more thing actually talk about, and that would be, well, here's one thing, interesting thing. So when I was designating the haplogroups, I designated KS tubal because it seemed to fit. It fit right. And then I found out that the K, that tubal was one of the original inhabitants of Italy. So I thought, oh no, well, So I go there to look specifically in Italy to see if there's a descendant of Tubal there, because there has to be, because there will have to be. If they were there in ancient times, there's going to be a remnant that's still there. So I looked there, and sure enough, here, 8%, 8% of central Italy, which is a big number, considering that all the other ones are outsiders. J2 is an outsider. R1B is Ripfath. E is from Africa. G is Assyria. E3 is from Africa. I, wow, that's a big number. I is Semitic. J is Semitic. J2 is Semitic. And then you have K2, which is Tubal. So there it is, confirming the fact that Tubal was one of the original inhabitants of Italy. And in southern Italy, it's 1%, because that's, has a lot more other influence as well. Let's see, in northern Italy, it's mostly the mountains. I don't see the K there. Oh yeah, it's K. It's 2% K. No, it's 2% plus 2 is 4% K. And the Yalas of the Thracians, which is interesting. So K is represented in Italy like it has to be. And so that confirms it. It was the same thing with the Medes. I heard the Medes went up into Europe, so I rushed and looked. Sure enough, the Q was there in Europe. Not only the Q, but the X and the W mitochondrial lineages were there as well. So that, because the Medes, the ancestor of the Medes, married a Semitic daughter, Shem. So they have a Semitic mitochondrial lineage up in Europe, the X and the W. So everything fits perfectly. Now I'd like to cover this here, because Dr. Nathaniel Jensen was trying to say that the T is the Judaic, and so in so doing, he swapped the nations, which are from Japheth, the 7 nations. He swapped them with the Semitic population. So he tried to say that K, oops, there it is. He tried to say that, that T is the Semitic population. So that would mean K is all Semitic. But when you look at the Sephardic Jewish populations, and the other ones too, you would think, being Mediterranean, because the Sephardics are all Mediterranean, right, that there would be a T somewhere. I mean, especially in the Mediterranean, because the T is the descendants of Javan. Remember, all the cities of Elisha, Dodanim, and Kittim, and the Mediterranean, Cyprus, and everything. You would think with that, oh, sorry about that. I'm going to open this up. With that kind of population, you would think there would be a T here in the Sephardic Jewish populations. So we have E, which is to be expected. We have G, which is another thing. The G is very significant in the Jewish populations, and it's in all of the Jewish populations. You can see it's all throughout here in this area. But the G is very important because of the fact in the book of Esther, you go to the end of the book of Esther and you'll read that a lot of the Medes and the Persians, no, that would be the Q. I'm talking about the Q. Oh, the G. Yeah, I got it mixed up. The G, anyway, go back, go down to the Q. The Q is there because the Medes and the Persians. But anyways, the G is there because of the Assyrians, because when the Israelites were exiled, they were exiled into Assyria. So they do have G in their population, significant amounts. But no T. Where's the T? No T. Absolutely no T in all these Sephardic Jewish populations. And the same thing for Ashkenazi too. They don't have T in their population because T is Mediterranean anyways. The only place, because sometimes they'll say the Sephardic Jewish populations have 5% T, but not here, not in these Mediterranean populations. So where's this 5% T come from? Well, it turns out that there's a place in the Mediterranean that seemed to be popular among the Jewish people, one of them being Jonah, who sailed where? Or who was sailing in the direction of what? He was sailing in the direction of Tarshish. So, and Tarshish is what? Tarshish is one of the sons of Javan, who has the T haplogroup, which is Eurasian haplogroup, which is designated as T. Turns out one single population in Iberia, turns out they have the T in their population. Here's the T right here. How much T? A lot of T. Remember, Tarshish is down here. Tarshish is right here in the Tartarus, and Tarshish down here. But this is the host population, not a whole lot of T, but look at this Belmonte population of Jews, Sephardic Jews, because they, these are called Sephardic Jews too, as well, pretty much. So you have the Belmonte Jews that have no T, again, 0 T. And of course, what do the Belmonte Jews have the most of? And what do all of these populations have the most of is J. So J is a Jewish haplogroup wherever you go. That's the host population. So even in the other one, even in this one over here, yeah, J, as you can see, well, anyways, J is the large, pretty much the largest percentage wherever it goes. Anyways, this is dragging too much, so I'll try to put it back. So if you want to know what the Jewish haplogroup is, it'd be J, specifically J2, because that would be Judah, basically Judah, which is Jews from Judah, J2, almost exclusively. And J2 M172 would be the descendants of the house of David and Solomon. So it's not only the house of David, it's the house of David and Solomon. which is the reason why the J2 M170, 172 is probably the House of David, which is the largest because it's the largest J2 lineage. But anyways, there's a single Jewish population called the Braganza Jews, that they have this T in their population. It's the only population, these Braganza Jews, the only population that has the T in their population. So that's where the 5% comes, because that's something like 14% or something like that in this single population. So if you take all the populations, then you're going to have T in the population. But it turns out that this is the only population with a T in their haplogroup, but it's because of their association with Tarshish. The same as Jonah wanted to have something to do with Tarshish. He wanted to go to Tarshish. Must have been a place to go or something. But anyways, there it is. So, moral of the story, this T haplogroup, which belongs to the K group, see the KLT, this cannot possibly, and plus these R1A, R1B, or Ashkenaz Ripfeth, they cannot possibly be Semitic. And because the Semitics are up here. There's the Semitics up here. It's F, G, H. Well, H, the Elamites are not here in this picture, but you got the I and the J. Of course, the I1 and I2 being tribes of Dan and Asher, in all probability, seem to be the lineages and migrations of the tribes of Dan and Asher, which are separate migrations, I1 and I2. But we still have more study, of course, to do. And there's just a lot of interesting things to see. We got, 8% of the population today in Italy is K, which happens to be the original inhabitants of Italy, or the descendants of Tubal. Of course, this Tubal is the same K that's all the way over in Papua New Guinea, with the derivatives M and S, which is basically K, which is, it's right from the K. Because if you look at this diagram here, which one did I have here? Oops. What did I do? Lose it? If you look at this diagram here, no, this is the wrong one. If you look at this diagram here, it's you have the K, the M and the S. Remember, K is a single lineage on its own, and it's also the whole group. But by itself, you have the M and the S. You follow the M and the S back to its point of origin, and it's comes straight out of the K with the genetic distance comparison. So the M and the S are two branches of K, the single lineage K, which is the population in Italy as well, or descendants of the population. Then there was a change. I changed this. I used to have the N as Meshach and the O as Magog. But it turns out, remember, the F and the K are not only single lineages, but they're a group of lineages. The F is a group of lineages. The K is a group of lineages, but they're also single lineages. There's another one which is not being shown here, but it's a P lineage, which is of all of this group of lineages here, the P lineage of Meshach, which I've designated as Meshech instead of the N, because the N is actually connected to the O here. It's a branch that's separated from the O, but it's the same lineage. This is all the northern people of Siberia and the northern Asia that have the N lineage, because they separated a long time ago. Eastern Europe, even Finland, they have N lineage. But then there's a P lineage, which you don't see very often, but it's a group of lineages, which is this group of lineage, but it's also its own separate lineage as well. So I designate, because the P has populations in Asia, Western Asia, and the P is also in Eastern Asia or Eastern Europe, exactly where it's supposed to be. So it's Meshech, Meshech, and Tubal, of course, being K. But it's not being shown here, but the P would branch off here somewhere, because it's not only this group of lineage, but it's its own lineage as well, the P lineage. And of course, the R is Gomer, the Q is Madai, and then the P would be Meshech. So that would be the 7 sons of Japheth, which is the Teniel, Javan, and the Thracians. That's 2. And you have the 3, Magog, Meshech, and 2 would be K, N-O now, N-O, and Meshech is P. That's 5. And then you have 6, 7 with Medes and Gomer. Be 7 sons of Japheth, 5 sons of Shem, 4 sons of Ham. And that's about it. That's about it for right now. So, well, I moved this thing all around or something. Anything else? Yeah, so today, this is what it looks like today. We'll see if we pull this map up here. That's what it looks like today. This is what the map looks like today of all the haplogroups where they are. Now, if you notice, we're going to see all the same stuff. Now we have here Elamo-Dravidian, because the Elamites are in this area here. So they call this Elamo-Dravidian, but they associate a Eurasian haplogroup with the Elamites, who are Semitic. So I'll just go with the Dravidians, which is are associated with, or they've been associated with the H, which is Semitic. And if you talk to these people here, it's not this is the Indus Valley, but if you talk with these people, these Dravidians here, they have a history, and maybe even these as having been Arabic, or having come from the Middle East here. So they actually have a part of their history as having migrated from this area over here, and which they call themselves Arabs, but it's Semitic, and of course, they used to be Elamites. It's Elamo-Dravidian. That's Elam. Elam is one of the grandsons of Noah. Canaan is one of the grandsons of Noah. Cush is one of the grandsons of Noah, and it goes on and on and on. These are all original ancient civilizations of everyone living today. Uh, uh, okay, so we were talking about the D haplogroup in the Andaman Islands. So we got the D in the Andaman Islands. We have the D, of course, in China. And we have the D all the way up here. I don't know why they have it a different color. But what's this area? What's this area up here? This is the Altai Mountains, the area of the Denisova Cave, all the way up there. Plus, you have the sea going all the way through here, which is can only be the descendants of Nimrod, because Nimrod is the only one who is king of the world, and Nimrod is the only Hamitic king in Asia. So C can only be the descendants of Nimrod, and to be Denisovan. Because they give these names. They have D2, Paleo-Siberian. Paleo-Siberian. Oh, but this is Hamitic. This is not even close to being Eurasian. The same thing with descendants of Nimrod is Hamitic, not even close to being Eurasian in origin. And of course, they got a dotted line over here to the Jomons. The Jomons over here and the Ainu Japanese over here, which I'm not sure which way they migrated, if they migrated across over here. Because I'm thinking they were the original population in Japan, but they were pushed out by this old population, which is Magog. So they were kind of like pushed up out of Japan and may have crossed that way. I don't know if I can trust this or not. I have to look up the D2 lineage, see if it does go this direction in the migration that they have. And this is D2M55. Ainu Japanese. So now you know the rest of the story. Now you know more complete his story of what actually happened. And of course, by looking at the migrations, by looking at the A and the B migration, well, they didn't have the A, but they had the B migrations, which is here. It's still here. The B migration started out in this area, which is none other than the area of Kush. This E3, this is a misnomer because this E3 is from Mitzrayim. They're not Kushite. I mean, they're being associated with Kushite here, but they're not actually Kushite if they're E3, because the Kushites are A and B. But if you look up the lineages of B, and A is not listed, or wasn't listed when I was looking at it, it's in this area. Starts out in this area and then spreads to other areas from here. But it starts out right here in this area, the A and the B lineage. And of course, the Khoisan are A and B, I guess, which is Kushite. And there's some over here. But the E1 is over here. Remember the descendants of Put? E1, but they used to be off the coast of North Africa. They used to be up here, but they were kind of like pushed out all the way over into Western Africa. This would be the E1. So this E1 would be the remnants of Put, or the namesake of the Phoenicians. The original Phoenicians, according to Josephus, were descended from Put. So Josephus identifies the original Phoenicians in North Africa with descendants of Put, who are now down here, where they kind of like got displaced. So over here by Mitzrayim, which is E3. So because these are separate groups, they're E1, E1, E2. Where's E2? If they're showing E2 here. E2 is Canaan. There's E2. Yeah, there's some E2. Yeah, this is the only remnant of the Canaanites, basically, is the ones that went into Africa, and the Sinites who went through Sinai to Sino China, and then went to Japan and Tibet, and that's why they're called Sino, is because they're from the tribe of Sidim, the Sinites. Okay, here we have a T down here because we have a history of Greeks trading with the Horn of Africa, and vice versa. We have a history of Africans going to Greece. That's the reason for the T, which is the Eurasian haplogroup, descendants of Javan. We have T over here as well. That would be Tarshish over there. And they originally started out in this area here. And of course, they're all over here. But that's the reason why they would be in the Jewish population. Oh, there's one more thing we got to cover. And of course, we got not only have the R1A of Ashkenaz, we have the R1B of Ripfath. You got the I1 and the I2. So this I1 here, M253, that's me. And the I2 would be the tribe of Asher, because they have two separate migrations, and they migrate at different times throughout Europe. So they're acting, I1 and I2 are acting like two different tribes, as far as I can tell. But this I1 here, that's me, I1, M253. We ended up in Scotland over here. There's the Q. Remember the Q in Europe? Of course, the W is over here, and the X is over here, like that. So the W and X is in this area as well. As the Q, which is the Medes when they went to Europe. And of course, descendants of Nimrod went to Europe too. It's not showing it here, but the C1 is in Europe. At least it's not showing. I don't see it too much. Here's C1. C1's in Europe. C2 is the Pacific. In case I didn't show it. C2, Polynesian. Polynesian, that's why they look Polynesian. C2 is in the Pacific here. There's C2 over here. C3 is in America, of course. Not Dene. They're trying to say they crossed this way, but I don't see any evidence of them crossing this way, because this is C1. And they're claiming that C3 crossed, but I would disagree. I would say they probably came from Central America, went north and went south. Remember, I was talking about the Wayu, the Kichwa, and the Wauranish. They're savage tribes in South America. Well, they used to be. And they have the C3 from Nimrod. And the rest of Americans are Q. So you have Q and C are the only ones, with exception of over here. Oh, look at this exception here. Isn't this an exception? R1B. You have R1. What's R1B doing in the area of the Great Lakes? R1B. Well, see the question mark here? How did R1B get here? So they actually have another question mark here. This route coming this way from, of course, Europe to here. But turns out it's not just R1B. They also have the mitochondrial DNA of X2A. X2A in the Great Lakes region. In all the tribes, there's a number of tribes. I don't have the map. I don't have the illustration here right now and the map. But they're also in this area, the X2A. And where else? Guess where else the X2A is found? Guess where? And remember, the X and the W are European Semitic mitochondrial DNA, right? But the other place you have the X2A is in actually Galilee. It's not shown here, but I've showed it before. The X2A is in Galilee and the Great Lakes region, which is the same mitochondrial lineage, which happens to be from the descendants of Madai, but it's the European lineage from Europe that went to America and is in Galilee today. Interestingly enough. But there's a whole lot more we could talk about, but I think there was one more thing I wanted to look at, because you have this. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is this one here. It's one of my favorite ones. If you followed any of my videos, it's one of my favorite illustrations because it's got a lot of good information here. So this is strictly Native American people. You might not say, might not be showing here, but it's a strictly Native American original. These are original populations. So this is Africa. It's orange. East Asia is blue. Southeast Asia is a darker blue. South Asia is a light blue. North Asia is a gray. Central West Asia, Middle East is yellow. So we have these color markers of where all the haplogroups are found today. So in America, America's brown here. So let's look at all these brown areas that are in America. So we look here, we can see the Q is here. The Q is in America. The Q2 is in America too. I don't know why it's not showing there. Because I just, no, that was a Q3. Anyway, so yeah, that was, well, anyways, I got to look at that later. So we have the Q here in America. The largest percentage of the population is Q in America. And as such, they're the descendants of the Medes who crossed over from the Atlantic, most of them, except for the Inuits that went by way of the Bering Strait, Beringia, as they call it. But here's the R1B. Remember the R1B in America? That's in America. That's a huge population. And then what else do we have in America? T. You have T in America too. Look at that. That's a large percentage. It's a large percentage of T in Native Americans, because a lot of times what Native Americans do, DNA test, it comes back Mediterranean. There's a Mediterranean. What's Mediterranean got to do with Native Americans? Well, there goes T. Right there. And because there were actually two migrations, by the way. There's a first through from the Mediterranean to here to Central America. They spread north and south. That's what the migration haplogroup DNA evidence shows. And there was another later migration that was up here to the Great Lakes region, and probably Nova Scotia and probably Oak Island too. For them. But anyways, that one, in that one, they were mining copper from the Great Lakes region. There's an ancient copper mine in the Great Lakes area. And it just so happens that all these indigenous tribes in this area have these haplogroups in their population, the X2A, the R1B, and probably some of these too. So we have the T in America. Oh, and the J2, that's Judah, descendants of Judah in America. Okay, because it's always been a big discussion, that Native Americans with the big noses, where did the big nose come from? Oh, that's why people are saying, oh, they're Jewish, Well, there you go, J2. Not only that, but there's another Semitic one. There's a G. That's Semitic as well. And not only is it J2, you have J1 as well, which could be Arabic, but it's basically Mediterranean. So the J1 is Israel and or Arabic. J2 is almost exclusively Judah. Remember the Cohen or J1. The Cohen modal haplotype is J1P58. That's J1. So the tribe of Levi is J1, tribe of Judah is J2. And of course, there's probably other Israelites tribes in there as well. There's I2. I have designated as Asher until proved otherwise or shown otherwise. And I1 is the tribe of Dan. So all these are, because these are the sea people, Israelite sea people who are the tribe of Dan and Asher. There's another one, I don't know if it's Zebulun, that was a sailing too, but I don't know if they were as prominent as Dan and Asher in the Mediterranean. Not only that, there's a even larger population of Israelite and or Arabic, but probably Israelite, that was also there. And of course, T is just basically Mediterranean. That would be Eurasian, but these are Semitic. All these are Semitic. G is Semitic, and that could easily account for the large noses of the not only North American Indian population, but in South America you have indigenous people with big noses too. But they were influenced, as far as I can tell, from the B mitochondrial haplogroup that crossed the Pacific. Whatever paternal haplogroup was traveling with the B is non-existent. They just disappeared because there was a group of Jews that left through this area here around Saudi Arabia and stuff, and they were looking for the land of gold. So they're probably going toward the Philippines, but they never, they might have made it to the Philippines, but there's no trace of them left because usually it's the male lineage that suffers, in battles. But the B, Semitic mitochondrial lineage, did cross the Pacific Ocean and landed somewhere in South America, and that accounts for the big noses of South American Indians. So there's more to history than meets the eye, and there's no sign of B crossing up here. The only place that B existed is the Philippines, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific is the only place where B is found. The B mitochondrial DNA, because it is found in the Philippines, by the way. I could have pulled up the map, but yeah. So the B travels through the Pacific, and it's found all the way here in South America. So we could go back to the other one just to find the B lineage. Oh, this not going to show it. Yeah, this won't show it. This is only the Y lineage. But anyways, the B lineage is in this population here. It's in the Oceania population, and the B is, of course, found in South America. There's the Beringia, but only the Q of the Inuit crossed over here hunting seals and whales and stuff. That's how they got over here, because they crossed from over here, but they didn't come from South America. See this not the name. They're trying to say that they crossed over this way, but I'm pretty sure they didn't do it. Some of them may have, but I'm pretty sure most of them, especially the Olmec and these tribes here, they crossed over the Atlantic to Central America, spread north and south from there. Olmecs over here. Wayuu, Kichwa, Waorani over here. And up this way, it's the C3, not an A. Oh, C3 Y haplogroup and Q3 Y haplogroup. It's Q3, and C3. Q3 Amerindians. So then that makes sense. And of course, I'm from just 3 degrees south of the equator, right on here. This is where I was raised, right here in South America. So there you have it. That explains the anomaly of the R1B, but not only that, but the other one as well. It explains the other ones we're looking at. Where did it go? Oh, right here. All these other haplogroups that were in South America, which is the G, the I1, the I2, the J1, the J2, the T, which is descendant of Javan and Tarsus and Dodenin Kittim and Tarsus. And the Q is the Medes, and the R1B probably arrived there at the same time as the T arrived there in North America, because they're one about the R1B, but they're not whole. I mean, there's not too many studies. There's this map, but there's no written studies saying how these Semitic populations arrived in America, along with this Mediterranean population and this Mediterranean population. This lineage arrived in America, mostly through Central America, with the exception of the Inuits, which is another Q population, but it's a separate lineage, separate migration. So I think that's about it. Okay, so we can consider the following. Oh no, this thing's weird. It's got to reload, but for all this time, it's not even working. It's got to reload again and everything. All right. So yeah, maybe the whole stream broke. I don't know. Oh, here we go. Got Iron Matt. Good morning, brother JJ. Iron Matt. I recently had my DNA check. Here we go. Recently had my DNA checked by Ancestry. They just tell you what regions that's autosomal, because that's autosomal. What regions your ancestor lived in, not the groups, not the haplogroup. Interesting, but also disappointing. Yeah, because you have to do a special test for the mitochondrial lineage, and you have to do another special test for the Y chromosome. So one test is to test your mitochondrial DNA. The other test is to test your Y chromosome, which only the male descendants have, which is both of them are non-recombining. The mitochondrial DNA doesn't recombine with any other lineage, and the Y chromosome doesn't recombine with any. It's just a straight lineage all the way back. So it's a straight lineage from the mothers through all of the mothers, and there's a straight lineage through all of the fathers. Where can I get the test? You have to check with your ancestry DNA, but you have to specifically look for the Y chromosome test and the mitochondrial maternal line. Those are two separate tests besides the autosoma. The autosoma is just the mixture of everything. It's just like a blur of everything. That's why it's not real accurate. It's more accurate than what it was, but it's not as accurate as the Y chromosome and the mitochondrial DNA. Yep. All right, that sounds good. So I think this is a pretty good stream. I mean, if anybody doesn't mind hearing my monotonous voice, it's not too bad. All right, that's it. All right. God bless everybody. Take care. Have a great week and a great walk with the Lord, because He will never disappoint. Any sacrifice you make for God, you will not be disappointed. God bless everybody. Take care.